Hey, and we're back. Welcome back to the Weekly Roundup. This is the place where we unpack what's been going on in the yoga, wellness, service industry and what we've been coaching our clients through. What's been going on this last week, Bridget? We've had some interesting conversations coming up. I know you yourself were even interested in, but a really common place that we're coaching is in stuff that sounds less sexy at first, the studio layout. But
Mhm.
any business at all, physical brick and mortar space, like how you lay out your space has ultra high impact. I think way more than people want to give it credit. What's up with that?
Yeah, huge. I have talked to so many clients over, my time as a coach and even really dealt with it even growing up with my parents' service-based businesses. It really, really matters what the client experience you know, it doesn't start when they walk in the door. It starts way beyond, way before that. It starts with your website and stuff. But their experience of your physical space, that beginning few moments, like that means everything. Like that's so important. And it's so important that they are not feeling rushed, that they're not feeling confused, that they're not feeling crowded. Like, right. So the studio that I currently have my studio in, the whole thing, this desk was already built in from the last business, and it is a nightmare. It is such a bottleneck. Everyone is always so uncomfortable. They've got like their, especially in the winter when you've got bulky, or even in Southern California, we still have winter. You've got your jacket on and your yoga mat over your shoulder. Terry's like, no, you fucking don't.
No, I'm sorry.
Listen, I'm from Minnesota.
San Diego does not have winter.
I'm from the great white American North. I know about winter. But anyway, you've got your yoga mat strapped on your back. And like, imagine you're brand new to yoga. You barely know how to hold this yoga mat. And all of a sudden, you're like in everyone's way and you're just trying to, so it's so important. And I've learned a lot from Josh too about how important layout of studio is. And I am thinking about moving my studio right now, and I might just have like a fully blank slate, a big old rectangle to start with. So I want to hear from everyone. What would you do? And like, what can people do also if they already maybe have an existing studio? I also want to hear like, what are little changes they can make, might be helpful to make the flow what matters. Josh, kick us off.
Uh, Two things, if it's cool, like just the precursor to add to what you're saying, because I think putting weight in, like, why would you consider the business side of things that there's limited stuff that are actually like directly in your control as a business owner. This is one of those things though. You, to some extent at least, you can control the flow of traffic through your space, and that massively impacts the experience that you're offering. So if you extrapolate that out, like this is your product. It really is. But the thing that I think gets missed, and the easy example of this would be a restaurant, is that how you lay out your space and how people move through it and the environment that you create. Of course, that's your product. The poignant word being environment. I'm going to go on a slight tangent. I swear I'll bring this back. Because the first thing about changing something for yourself is you need to change your environment. If you don't want to eat cookies, throw all the fucking cookies out. That's a change in environment. If you want to learn about how to run a really dope service business, you should be in the Artha community where there's other people who are also doing that and people who are two, three, four, five, 10 steps ahead of you. You should come to the business summit that we've got in November. Like the number one thing every single year that we get is a first timer comes to the summit and then they come for 10 years straight because they're like, it's not even that the techniques and what we did was like that was all very powerful. It's that someone else that I would resonate with was saying things matter of fact that I didn't think were possible. They're like, oh, well, last month when I did 87,000 and I had this whatever, they're like, what? I only did 87,000 in a year. And it changes the way they look at their own business. That's environment. The environment signals not only like who you are, the business, but it signals how I should be the client. It signals the status level I have for participating in this environment. It signals how, like, maybe belonging or how I can go on a path, even if I'm not sure what that is. But the other way to say this is that it signals who I get to be while I am in your environment. And that's why I come back. I love myself in your yoga studio, even if I'm going to say it harshly, I hate myself outside of it in another context. That's what the third space is. And that's way more powerful and not voiced than people think. So the simple motif, style, feel, vibe, details, and the layout of your space has massive, like way bigger impact than you think. Practically speaking, here's the layout cheat sheet from, like, we'll look at it from like a yoga studio standpoint. You're often more of a group class situation, but this is not dissimilar in almost any other business. We've tested this concept against literally 1,000 businesses. I've built or been part of building 5+ different like yoga studios and non-yoga studio businesses as well. On top of that, what seems to hold true is you have an entrance, which is a landing pad where I'm going to leave my stuff that I arrived with behind. You have a check-in of some sort, which is a threshold. It's the red velvet rope thing for the club. It's like when I cross this line, I'm in. Like there has to be a strong threshold. It doesn't have to, but like this is the ideal. Then when I'm in, the order at which I am going to participate in the product would be the consideration. So if I'm going to a yoga class, I need to get changed. So I next should get changed. I should come out of changing and I should fill my water bottle and collect my gear and I should sit down in a waiting spot of some sort where I can communicate with other people who are there. Then I'm going to go into my class and then I'm going to come out of my class and sit down and go back into the change room and change and shower and whatever else. And I'm going to come back out and go by the check-in threshold where people are like, hey, see you later, collect all my stuff from the outside world and leave. And that order, we see it reversed, actually, I would say close to the majority of the time. But that order has huge implications of flow. Like it really, it doesn't bottleneck. It lets people move past each other, but slow down and connect with each other. It's logical, not that people register that. And so, like, the feel of that flow works really well. In my experience, if you were starting with a blank canvas, that's the formula. How exactly you accomplish that, that's the variable.
When I moved into our new space, it had already been a space that was designed as a fitness space. And it was completely perfect. The weird thing was, is it had the same exact blue carpet from my old studio in Massachusetts. So I walked in and I was like, this is my old studio. Oh crap, I have to do this. That was my first inclination. I was like, oh no, I have to move my studio. So anyway, it had all that. It had the flow, but it has this really long hallway that we needed to do something interesting with. And I feel like we kind of nailed it actually, because it's got, some cool stuff on the wall. It's got like plants. The music starts like right when you cross the threshold, you can hear music. And our desk is set up right at the end of it. So there's no other place to go but the desk. Um, and I do want to say, when I had my first on-site with Josh and Terry, their first observation was, this is a bottleneck up here. We got to figure this out. And it was so simple. All we did was split up the desk into two stations, and it literally changed everything. So big, big shout out to just having an outside perspective on your space every now and then, like somebody walking in and being like, so did you recognize that like this is happening here? Everybody's standing here and staring at, person A when person B is just standing over here doing nothing. Um, and now our flow is just, it's so dialed in. And sometimes people do get lost at the front. But we have enough staff up front to be like, hey, come over here and chat with us over here. Like if it's busy at the station A. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I love a new space. It's such an exciting feeling, but yeah, it can be a little bit like, okay, where do we put all this stuff?
I also, this is just a practical like pro tip if you're listening, because we know Bridget loves pro tips, is I would never build in the front desk because that doesn't allow and accommodate for things changing. So many studios that would go, and I have a couple clients in this right now. It's like they have these beautiful built-in desks, but it's become a bottleneck because of, and everybody seems to want to put the front desk right by where you go into the yoga studio. And maybe that works in the beginning when you're, but it wouldn't, if you've got, if you have a bigger room, let's even say you don't even have a big room. Let's say you have like 20 people, but if you have 20 people coming in, 20 people going out, and they're right there at the front desk, and you have all this other space, it creates this bottleneck. And that's one of the things I see so much wasted space in so many studios. And so the first thing I would be pro tip is don't build your front desk, and you can still have a gorgeous front desk. And I would put it on wheels. I had mine custom made, and I had it on, industrial casters, which was great because then we could move it out of the way if we needed to. We could also get and clean underneath it. We could, it was way easier to navigate. Um, so, first thing is whatever you have, put it on wheels and don't build it in so that you can move things around. Because my lobby was so small that it was nice. I could push it all the way against the wall just to create a little more space. And I will also say my lobby was small is we let people talk in the hot room because there was the only place they could sit besides the changing room was in the hot room. And I'll never forget one time when someone came out, was a visitor, and she was really visibly upset. People are talking in there or something. I said, yeah, yeah, isn't it kind of cool? And that just sort of shut her down. But that would be, and then also like to Shannon's point, when you're doing the flow, think about it when the studio is busy. Think about, even if you're a brand new studio and you're like, oh, you have a couple of people, think about if you're, especially when the times when you have a back-to-back class, is if my capacity is 20 or 25 or 30, mine was 36. If I have 36 people coming in and 36 people coming out, how is that going to impact everything? And here's another pro tip, and this doesn't have to do with layout, and I might be busted on this. Depending on the type of class you have, 15 minutes is not enough time between classes. The other thing too is looking at the flow. If you have shorter time between classes, is how is this going to be impacted? So, Josh.
No, that is a good point when you're looking at laying out the studio. Like what's your absolute maximum number of people? Like there's a fire code component of that, but if your room is X and you're going to have classes back to back and they're going to transition like this and then that's going to happen 3 or 4 times in a row, that's your maximum. And so like that's the stress test. And what gets missed in that, and the 15 minutes is an element of it, where like 15 minutes, I agree, generally is too short, unless your layout and your team are large enough that you can accommodate that, but that's usually not the case. But realistically, doing like an hour between classes is so inefficient, you're not going to do it. And so it's really like 30 minutes is the sweet spot between scheduled classes, regardless of the product in most cases. There are exceptions, of course. But the point would be that 30 minutes means you're going to have customer crossover. Um, that matters a lot. And so I think the other component of that is that in that moment, what are you trying to accomplish? And this is where new owners of like boutique fitness wellness studios, I think, just really underestimate and undervalue a few things to no fault of their own, but they just maybe never experienced it themselves, weren't trained on it, whatever. But it's just the simple thought that your front desk is the contact point for the studio. It's where you can strategically slow things down or speed things up. Most studios, when they get busy, are concerned with speeding it up only. We want to just get people through. But part of that stress is that the space between whatever the front door and where the desk is small, that like if a whole bunch of people were there coming and going, you would miss something or something, like there would be a problem. And the problem that they don't voice explicitly that I'm getting to is sales. When else are you going to fucking sell someone something? And you are going to need to sell someone something. Like you are going to have that conversation. And if you think right now, listening to this, you're like, yeah, John, but like we can just talk to them over and that. Like I can just, someone can leave the desk and go over and talk to them and sell them something. No, you can't. That's not how that works. Not at volume, not at scale. If you have a product that's really like more appointment based and it's really more one-on-one or like really small group, maybe you would have an argument for this. You could do like an Apple Store layout situation. Like there are other ways to solve this, but the consideration is some level of control over the flow. Long-term member Terry, who's been coming for 10 years, who I can just like give the thumbs up to and not talk to just this one time today because brand new person Shannon just showed up. I want Terry to be able to be like, beep, go through. So like just the simple where the space is, do I go to that side or this side, the size of the desk, that's part of that flow. Brand new person Shannon, I want to make it effectively impossible that Shannon could enter my space, make it through, and that could happen in a way that my staff does not accurately identify this is a brand new person. I should speak to them and help them and show them around and do my whatever and sell them something. And that it's not so wildly uncomfortable for Shannon to stand there at the desk as I'm going to have to say like 2 or 3 sentences. Like it's not a big thing. That's what you're solving for. And in the beginning, the like one of the number one layout mistakes is that this is just not considered at all. It's completely outside of any thought whatsoever. And it will totally fuck your business. Like when we come and do an on-site at a place, sometimes we can't change the layout of things. We can't move the desk. Like we've got to deal with what we've got. That doesn't change this fact. Like this is the thing that we solve for first. Before we even train the sales team on anything, we're like, how come the team isn't selling anything? Well, part of it is because they don't have any opportunity to sell. There's people coming in the business, they don't have any opportunity because people just go through. And I hate that I have to say this, but like this is just true in businesses that are like relatively high volume, like a yoga studio. If you're a yoga studio that has 2 rooms and they both fit 30, 40 people, and then you've got classes back to back to back, someone is stealing from you in the business. I'm not saying that like it might happen or sometimes it is happening right now. I can almost guarantee it. They might not be doing it maliciously or on purpose, although we've absolutely seen that too. Someone's giving the wrong name at the check-in, someone's not checking into the class, therefore not using one of their 10 classes. So they actually get 12 or 13 for the same price. Someone is like moving through or checking in somebody else so that that person doesn't get the late cancel fee or something. Someone's bringing their friend through and not even registering at all. This stuff is happening fucking so much more than you think it is. And I don't want to paint a negative light on people. It's just like this happens. But the radical responsibility part is you are letting it happen. Your system allows this to be true. And the studios we've seen this the worst, 100% of cases, it's not like I would love to be like, oh, it's because in this market in Portland, that's what people do. That's not what it is. It's that the system and the team enforcing the system aren't trained and don't have control over this. So it allows it to be true. If you give people an advantage, they will take advantage. That's a human trait. And so would I. Like, why would you not? Now, there's an ethics question around some of the stuff I'm talking about, but that aside, the responsibility is the control of the flow to be able to govern these things. And going back to the main point, to be able to sell someone something. If you're wondering why your business isn't growing, but you have people coming through, it's because you're not selling anything. Why aren't you selling anything? Because you're not having any sales conversations. Why not? Because everyone just fucking walks straight through. Start there.
Yeah.
Go
The
ahead,
other
Terry.
thing is this could happen, and I've known this to happen, is someone comes in and they haven't even signed the waiver and they get into class. Take everything else out of it. The stealing, whatever, the scamming, I'm not signing in, I'm going to get a couple extra classes. Someone comes in, it's not signed the waiver, gets hurt in class, you're fucked. Because now there's no, you're
It's
totally
cl-
on.
this is it's rare. This is
It's
rare.
rare, but
I
it
don't want to
can
fear
happen.
monger.
No, we're
No, no,
not
but
fear mongering.
I don't want to fear monger, but like this literally, we've seen it,
Yes.
closes your business.
Yeah.
You're done. It's over for some businesses.
The other couple of points with again, going back to if you can in your space, is with the flow, is if you could have two doors, like you have a door that you go in and a door that comes out, and then so that there is a flow to that too. If you have the ability to put in two doors, particularly when you're having, I had to go to this with my studio because again, my lobby was tiny and I had two doors. And so we had to go actually start managing people. Hey, when you leave the studio, you go out that door, you come in this door. So we kind of had that flow going on. And I do also want to make one more point about the reason I'm harping on this 15-minute is because I've had studios that are struggling with this. And Shannon, I know you can speak to this, is think about depending on where you are, like if you're a shopping mall, whatever, you're in your suburb or whatever, parking, right? If you have a short window and you want to churn and burn. But if you have like a 30, 35 person room and it's full, you've got 35 people, you got cars there, you're in the suburbs. It's like, what about parking? So that's the other thing you need to think about. This all kind of goes to schedule. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent on this, but these are all things we forget that we don't think about when we're trying to maximize the schedule is we got to make it so that people can get there and park and come in. Because if someone shows up first time, they can't even find a place to park, they're probably just going to leave and write you a bad Google review. Josh.
One of the studios, parking absolutely is a consideration when you're looking at spaces. It kind of leads into some of the layout stuff. One of the studios I built was they had rezoned an area of the town. And so it had previously been industrial, and the actual space was pretty much a blank slate, which was cool. But the disadvantage was like literally jackhammering concrete to put the plumbing in for a toilet, sort of thing. So it was a big job. And we put in $380,000 in investments in just leasehold improvements. And that was in 2015 or no, not even, sorry, 2009. And so, like, I don't know what that is now. A lot. That's some Bitcoins. So, but the point though about it was just the smartest thing we did in that space was that because it was an industrial building, it had it was on a road, so it had frontage and it had three parking spots in front, and the main entrance was in the front. And if you're in an industrial, I think it was a car shop or something before, that makes sense because that's how many customers come through at a time. But behind the building, in a chain link fence, was this big open lot because they used that for whatever, but that was now where actually the parking was. And so it would have for every other business in the because it was a 7 unit thing or whatever, you parked in the back and then you walked back around to the front to go in. Well, this was in northern Canada. It's minus 40 in January and like literally a foot of snow and ice and like a much bigger deal than you think. And the coming and going of people, they'd all be walking back and forth and then cars in and out. And so we just flipped it the other way around, and the entrance was on the back of the building. And we put a huge sunshine slider door and everything else. And people thought we were fucking crazy. Like the first contractor I was working with, didn't even want to do it. They're like, no, but like the thing here, whatever. We had to convince the city that this could pass inspection. And we were like, why is this even like it was the most ridiculous thing. I brought cookies every single day to the downtown city people or whatever to be like, hey, like, we just sign off on this and move this thing forward? Like, we're not doing something weird. We're just saying that's going to be the main entrance. Like, what are we talking about here? But had we have not done that, I think it would have sunk that business. I don't think it would have worked at all. Like that's how big of a deal it was. Smartest move ever. And luckily, I had enough experience building other places at the time to identify that. But tied to parking, but that's a layout thing. It's like the entire layout flipped upside down or flipped the reverse way just from this one thing. Um, which leads to the point I was actually going to say, which is, Bridget, your question, like, okay, what should you consider if you're going blank slate? If we're kind of looking at it a little bit more through that lens, what do you prioritize? I'm working with someone right now that they're moving spaces and it's a brand new building, so that's what we've been working on is this blank slate piece of the puzzle. The priority with the flow and the sales and stuff in consideration are the things that you can't change. It's you think right now you're like, well, could always just move this wall. No, you're not going to fucking do it. You are not going to do it. The things you can't change are the things that require full business shutdown for like a week at a time. They require you taking things out of your own hands. It's like as soon as you get a contractor that has to come in, demolition, move, rebuild, guaranteed they're going to go over time. Guaranteed it's going to be more expensive than you think. Guaranteed it's going to cost your business so much more than you think it is. You're fucked. Those are the things get real sticky on them in the beginning. And so a good example would be, let's use the yoga studio as an example. You've got a smaller square footage, 2,500 square feet, something like this. And you're like, okay, well, like it would be nice to have a change room this size and some storage and this and whatever. And my yoga room's going to be 700 square feet. Where do you make money in a yoga studio? Your yoga room. So you just set the upper limit capacity of possibility. Like you just set your inventory capacity at 700 square feet. That's what you have to look at. Whereas just 8, 9,000 square feet, like 700 to 1,000 square feet, that's the extra 10 people per class times 6 classes a day times a year that make you real profit. And you're not changing that after the fact, especially not if you're like if you heat your studio, but any studio, like forget it. You're not changing those things. Another one I'll add, Terry, before we spin to you is so what are the things that are hard to change? This sort of ties together with this. I think one of the things that is under considered is line of sight. It's like operationally, there's your client flow, but there's also your team's flow. Where do I have to move if I'm working? And like, if I need to lock the front door to be able to go to do the laundry, that you might not avoid that, but like that's suboptimal sort of thing. How do we, and there's other ways to address that if there's a retail thing or like if there, I'll use a hot use as an example, like Shannon's studio. If someone can come out of the hot room and then pass out on the floor, and the person working the front desk can't see that happening, or the teacher can't see that happening, like that's a risk. And so line of sight to be able to, because the team like needs to be able to move and do stuff, and then also react and interact with the shit that's going to happen because it will. There's all sorts of crazy stuff, including and not limited to class is in and I'm over here restocking this, and then someone comes in asking about membership. Like I should immediately see it and be able to transition over to selling them something, just stuff like that. So that's the other consideration. Do you have a line of sight to the front door? Can you see to the back? Can you see the entrance of things? Whatever.
Yeah, I was really fortunate that I didn't build my studio. I bought my studio. And fortunately, the previous owner who built it out, Norman, God rest his soul. And yeah, Shannon knew Norman. He was thought a lot like Josh. In fact, Josh, I think you and Norman would have got, don't you think Norman would have, Josh, they would have gotten along really well. Anyway, my studio, my entire square footage was 1,890 square feet. And my hot room was almost 1,100 of that. So basically, Norman fit in 800 square feet, 2 changing rooms, 2 unisex showers, 2 unisex bathrooms, and a small lobby. And I'm so glad he did, because like Josh said, it's like I did not have a single wasted inch of space in my studio. And this is where Bridget built when you're building out, this is what I see a lot of not only wasted space, but space that's not earning you revenue. Because that's the other thing you want to think about is like I like to say, Even my walls earned me revenue because I did really well in retail and I had slat wall on the walls. I one time calculated, here's a good one for everybody if you think about it. Take your total sales and divide it by your total square footage to see how much revenue you're generating per square foot. And I think I was like almost $400 per square foot in my studio because it was small. So that's the other thing. Sometimes, and like people would hang out in the hot room, and that was fine. I see a lot of wasted space with these really cozy areas and this and that. And yeah, it's nice to have them, but reality is people usually aren't hanging out in those spaces. They're coming in, they're leaving. So
Yeah.
yeah.
There's there was a movement. It still exists a little bit. But there was this really big movement, especially in the yoga world, and we see it happen in right now where it's happening the most actually are in gyms, more than anything else, where there was this movement from yoga being like the primary purpose of what you were building was doing the yoga class itself and it working that way. And like everything else was sacrificed to the point that like, I don't know if you guys ever went into a yoga studio circa 1998. They were, and I don't mean like someone rented a room somewhere. I mean, someone actually built a studio. It was hilarious. They were janky. It like the weirdest, nonsensical. You're like, you used to rent a room in the basement of a church, then you got a whole building and built the equivalent shittiness of the basement of the church. Like, what were you doing? Just weird. Anyways, but then over time that progresses, and for quite a while, especially I would say like maybe 2010 on, but by the time we hit 2015 for sure, people were building fucking spas for their yoga studio. And so you're just all this money is invested and you're spending more on square footage. But to your point, Terry, if you did the dollars per square foot, the efficiency was terrible. And of course, you're not going to like maximize every square inch of your space, but just it was looked at through this like if I make it really pretty and nice in here, and if I have like these cool cushions and chairs and this built-in whatever over here, that like that's going to increase my business. And you get a false positive because when people come into your space like that, they say things like, it's so nice in here, so beautiful, I really like this. But if you just ignore that, the same person who says that, and just watch them move through your space, where do they go and where do they spend their time and where do they interact with other people? And you see suddenly the things that they pointed out as being like really awesome and nice, they actually give no shits about. Like they do not participate in it at all. So just a lot of, yeah, a lot of wasted square footage. And you can change those things, but it's just thinking about it through the lens of whether you have a larger space or a smaller space, like what actually impacts the quality of your product and your business, what actually matters to your client. You should have somewhere to sit and for people to talk. In Terry's case, because it was small, it was in the room. And so that was just a policy decision. You could plan it that way. In the same studio I was saying where we reversed it, there was L-shaped sitting right outside of the yoga room door, but enough strategically enough space, like it wasn't narrow, so that people coming out could get past and then people could go in, and there was this nice little flow, and that's where everyone sat. We had a couple nice chairs for decoration in the front. Nobody sat on them ever. At first, we were like, people are going to sit on them when they're sweaty and it's going to wreck the chairs. 12 years later, perfect shape because no one sits on them. Go figure. Bridget, back to your initial question, what is on your mind, like just from your experience, obviously as a coach and seeing a lot of studios, traveling, seeing and practicing a lot of studios, but then with your current space and then looking at this new space, like what are some things that you're thinking about in terms of, I'm just thinking about there must be something or a few things where you're like, if there's unlimited space, money, whatever, I'm changing this or I'm doing this. What's that list?
Yeah. Um, this is so random. Shannon and I were talking about this before, but because I want a shower there not for anyone else, but because I am remote and I have to stay there. Or it's nice when I can stay there. I'm going in a couple weeks, and luckily I have a friend who is going to be out of the country, so I'm staying at her house, which is great. But those Airbnb and hotel fees really pile up and make being a remote owner not financially great. So anyway, so I need a shower in there just for me. Nobody else is allowed to use it. So that's one little change that would be a huge upgrade for me. The for sure, I'm so excited to have some separation between the lobby and the practice room. In our space, like technically it's in a different area and it's, it's down some steps or whatever, but my staff, like now they go into we do have a back office, so they can do that, but they can't do a ton of cleaning while classes are going on because they'd be like mopping in the middle of Sun A or whatever, So it just like it doesn't make a ton of sense. So I'm excited for that. That'll be a whole new world. And, sales conversations, of course, happening. Like a lot of times, one of the issues we repeatedly run into is when the number one reason my staff says I couldn't have a conversation with this person about upgrading is because they came in late. And normally I would be like, I don't care if they came in late. You can still have a conversation with them and then bring them into the back or whatever. But when you have a conversation when everyone's meditating, that's like not conducive. So anyway, excited about that. Um, and I really love our space size wise, but one of the things I'm struggling with is I'm not like I can't figure out how much space you need. And I can just Google this stuff, of course, or like put it into ChatGPT, but I don't know, I guess um yeah, I guess I don't know how much space I need for all this stuff. And like, I see how a small lobby can work from hearing Terry, but I also can see how like a bigger space, we definitely don't have any space like that in our current. Everyone just chats in the main studio, which works great. But anyway, so yeah, those are just some of the things I don't even know how to really conceptualize.
They're tricky things at first. A couple of things came up as you were reflecting that, Bridget. Like one, really practically, if you get into a space and it's a more open slate, and this is a normal thing to do, and this takes energy. So usually, like you're either already have signed the lease and like you're going to do this thing, or you're really, really, really considering it and you're going all the way. Get painter's tape. Like on, you always need the layout on paper first. Lay it all out or whatever. Get someone to check the logic of it in terms of like wall spacing and whatever else. But then get a measuring tape and painter's tape and lay the whole thing out on the floor the best that you can, even if there's existing walls. And even if you have an existing business and you're like, okay, I'm thinking about moving the desk here or changing this or whatever else, put something there and like visualize it and go stand there and move around with it and sort of like get a feel for it. If you have the ability to do that, that answers a lot of questions really quickly because things that, you Google it or AI it and it's like, a bathroom should be this many square feet and the wall should be like this. And then you lay it out and you're like, no, like this is way too big or way too little or like really stupid. And you won't know till you're going on it. So that's one simple thing. I just add the comment too, because I have another thought on that too. The separation piece. Separation in a space equals it's like a internal environment shift. It changes the focus of the moment. I'm not thinking, behaving, and doing the same thing inside the Pilates room with all the reformers as I am in the change room, as I am in the lobby. I'm behaving different. Reformer Pilates, especially, is a great example of this because the reformer machine takes up so much space, or Megaform would be similar like this. Most studios are just that one room scenario. You walk in, there's a desk, there's a change room back there, but you don't even have showers or whatever. You usually show up in your spandex, you get on the machine, and so everything's just one space. And that does exactly what Bridget's describing, where then when we're working with a client like that and we're talking about sales, sales can only happen before and after the class. Cleaning and phone calls and everything else can only happen outside of the studio, or if you like, they go sit in the bathroom, like you're not going to do that. And so it's efficient and also limiting operationally. And the question is does that trade-off make sense in the market? Like paying a little more for 500 square more feet to have separation might be really worth it. The way that I think about it in my own head is there's these different bubbles. I'm like, I enter and I land into like this bubble. I'm leaving the outside. Then I like move through this threshold and I'm in a different bubble. And then I move into the, you know, yoga space or whatever, and I'm in a different bubble. And when I enter that bubble, the whole environment energy shifts all the way down to a super easy example of this is when I enter the space, what I smell and what I hear is one thing. When I enter the change room, it might be different. When I enter the yoga room, it's probably different again, or it could be different again. It's like if separation exists, that could be true. Like you would have that level of control. And that's, of course, speakers and smell machines, but it's also layout that do that. The how much space do you need for this, that, or the other thing? I think one of the questions that, and this doesn't give a really, really specific answer, but like one of the questions that can be helpful to put down on paper working through it is where will people spend the most amount of their time? Where do I want them to spend time? Where, what space has the highest impact in their experience? But for me, I don't know why it's way easier to look at that one in the negative. Like, where is it that if it's wrong, I'll be pissed off about it and not say something? What's that space? If you don't have the nice couch seating area and the beautiful coffee table and the tea stand or whatever in your yoga studio, I literally won't notice if you don't have it. I give no shits about it. It has no impact. If you have it, I'll notice to be like, that's cool, and maybe use it. But I would never go through and then come back out if everything else is right and be like, I would like this place, but you don't have a tea stand in a seating area over here. Said no one ever. And so low impact space. Change room or bathroom, I'm coming to work out or whatever, and there's one toilet or like one urinal and one toilet like for everyone there, and you have a 35-person room. I'm not saying you can't make that work. I'm just saying like that's the thing I'm going to be annoyed with. You're a hot yoga studio. Shannon's putting her head down because she has one bathroom in her thing. I'm saying you can make anything work, but we're talking about idealistically, what would you put together? Now, do you need 10 toilets and bathroom river? No, absolutely not. But like those are the things that have some impact in what's going on. So I would put that down to paper. Like, what are the things that would be annoying? What are the things that impact my behavior when I'm not here? It's my decision making of participation. I'm thinking of coming to Bridget's new studio for a yoga class, and I want to come after work or before work, actually, is a better example. And that means I'm going to have to commute there, park, come inside, uh, change, and then I'm going to have all of my stuff for like to do my hair, my makeup, to fix my beard all nice, whatever it is. And I want to do that and then leave and go directly to work. It requires that work is like that. Or if you don't have that, it requires I go home first. None of these are right or wrong, but if that's your market and who you're going for and the product that you have, then that's the consideration that now you've just eliminated it. If there's no showers, no real change room, nowhere for me to get ready, then that just changed your scheduling on your whole studio. Now you have to run your class earlier because you have to create space for someone to go to you and then go all the way back home and then go to work. You've also just changed the radius that people will travel to you, that most people will travel to you for that scheduled time of classes. That might be fine, but that's the difference. That's the confusing part where you're like, I have this yoga studio and no one comes to my early morning class at 7 a.m. But when I go to the gym at 7 a.m., it's fucking packed. What am I missing here? People just like the gym better. Maybe, but also, no. Like, also, there's something else going on with that. They can be there for just 30 minutes instead of your whole entire 75-minute class. They can shower afterwards, they can get ready, they can go home. There's way more parking. No one's going to say that stuff out loud to you, but that convenience stuff, it absolutely impacts the business. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Shane.
it's interesting, Josh, because my previous studio in Massachusetts had 5 showers, and my 6 a.m.s were absolutely dead. And I have
Yeah.
no showers in my current studio, and my 6 a.m.s are sold out with a wait list every day.
Yep. Yep.
So it does speak to that. And as a recovering shower offering studio owner, I can say not having showers is pretty freaking great.
Yeah.
I would say, Shannon, 6 a.m. probably was not early enough.
In Mass, you mean?
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, and it also wasn't a work from home. Like that wasn't happening then. That was
Yeah.
Yeah.
pre-COVID. So yeah,
Yeah.
That was back, way back, go back, fall
that
back
was in the real world.
in the real world thing.
The what you're highlighting brilliantly, Shannon, too, is like local culture of things too. A really good example of this that I experienced was when we were building one of the studios in Alberta, Canada. We were putting showers and change rooms in, and it was going to cost, I don't know, like anyone who's put in a new bathroom knows, like that's one of the largest expenses in the build out. Annoyingly so. It costs fucking way more than you think it does for no reason at all. I mean, there's reasons, but just it's expensive. And so it would have been like a 20% reduction in cost for the showers if we just had like the one open shower situation. Where I grew up, that was normal. That was everywhere. Every anywhere that had showers, it was like that. I also grew up playing hockey, so I'm like, this is just how showers are. Like I don't wouldn't even think about it at all. Jenna was like, I don't know. I'm fine with it, but I'm not sure people like locally think this is a thing. So we went through the effort to pull like, some of her family members, some other people that we knew in the area, or whatever else. And it wasn't just that everyone said hell no. It was they vehemently, with a squinted face, were like, ew, I would never go. Like they were like, I wouldn't even go to the studio if you put a gang shower in there. And they had terms like gang shower, like what is this prison? Like just it was so clear that culturally that was not the way to do. So the result was we put in individual shower stalls instead, and that meant in the men's there were only 2 showers, whereas they would have had 5 or 6. So like we would have had more facility at the same price, but the bottom line being that would have been the wrong move. And so, same thing to what you're describing, just because it's like if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will use it. No, not exactly. So, I think this is another layer too. Having been to your studio a few times, Shannon, too, I can say in the local community, like moving about that community isn't so terrible. And so, it feels normal that I'm going to go to and from my place maybe a couple times in the day. If you're LA proper, I don't, unless you're right next to where my house is, like probably not. I leave the house early and then like I'm gone until I come home and then I'm not leaving again. because everywhere takes forever to get anywhere, sort of thing. Hmm.
So, Bridget, are you sorry you asked, or?
Kind of. No,
Here's two other like super practical things. I just remembered, Bridget, you actually kind of somehow triggered this. Oh, it's your shower comment that you selfishly you want to shower. Like that's a good reason to put one in for
yeah.
yourself for yourself. But it's staff space. One
Mhm.
thing that's really common in any business, I'm thinking about even like way back, I had a job at a retail store, like a retail clothing store. I made it maybe a week because I just hated it. And the boss was like, he's like, I don't know, like you're kind of like, what's the issue? And I'm like, I just don't want to come to work every day. And I remember it was the first time ever I really in my life stared a boss in the face and was like, I just hate it here. Like, I don't want to come to this thing. And he was like, well, see you later. Like, thank you. You're doing me a favor. Anyways, there was no like every square foot of the space. It was like you could come with your little lunch bag, and there was this little room in the back that was so small you couldn't fit your body in it, and you could throw it all in a pile in the corner, and it would get all dirty and covered in dust or whatever. That was the only staff space. Same thing, the Pilates studio, like, oh, it's all this one nice, beautiful thing, but then you've got these Pilates workers showing up, and there's one or two of them, and like, there's nowhere for them to put their bag or put their stuff or have to store food or like, and so their stuff spills over into the rest of the space. And so staff space actually has impact in a couple ways that we sometimes miss. One is separation again. Staff stuff is staff stuff. Do not have it in client area stuff, in my opinion, for cleanliness, etc. But also, if I'm your staff, you want me to be comfortable in your space. So it doesn't have to be a lot, but just the fact that it would blow your mind how far it goes if you give your staff their own locker. If there's a staff room and they have their own locker that they can lock and leave their shit in, and you got a little tiny bar fridge in the back that they can put food in, that goes so much further than you think it does in any business. And we don't often use the word retention talking about staff, but if you've got A players, you want to retain them. How do you do that? These are the like unspoken things where it's enjoyable to work in your business because it's enjoyable for me to be there because I can have a lunch and a change of clothes and whatever else. Like this stuff counts.
Hashtag Terry's dad. Not only did we have a nice break room, but he stocked it. Not just coffee and tea, but sandwich fixins, snacks, soda, all the things. And people stuck around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So hashtag Terry's dad. I haven't had one of those in a while.
This is a bit like this is taking it to the extreme. We had one studio where the staff room was pretty large. It doubled as like an office. So if there was a third person, like there's the front desk team and the teacher team, and then if there was a third team that was on shift doing something and they needed a space to go do it, or just me, there was another space for it. So that was helpful. It had cubbies or lockers for everybody. We were allowed to leave stuff. It had a fridge and a little mini kitchen thing in it, kettle, whatever else, so you could make food and didn't have to leave or whatever else. But then it also had a couch that was a pull-out couch. And because of where we were, like there's a limited inventory of people who could come and work at the studio or come and teach classes. So we did have visitors come through. We did have people we'd bring from out of town. And now we had a space for them to stay as well that was comfortable. And so that was specific to that situation. But all of those opportunities, the 50 people that came and stayed in that thing for a weekend or a week or whatever else, I don't know what impact that had on the business, but a good one. That otherwise I would have been staying at my house and we had a little janky one bedroom house with a leaky roof and like a gravel driveway that you couldn't even plow, so you had to just walk through the snow anyways. We had nowhere to put. I'd be like, here's a blow up bed, sleep on the whatever. It would have been terrible, and I would have been annoyed because also,
Well,
let's be honest, you don't have to live with your employees. So
yeah. There were some studios that I worked at or knew of that not necessarily even traveling teachers, but let's say you had a teacher that had to drive away to come, they could teach like the two evening classes, spend the night, and
yeah,
then teach like they could get like four classes in less than 24 hours if they were driving a distance away. And so having a place for people to crash and having slept many a night in yoga studios when I was doing trunk sales, because when I was a teacher, I also repped some lines of yoga clothing, and I would literally go load my car up, go to the studio, sell the stuff, and I slept many a time in a yoga studio, which is also very interesting experience. And I would just sleep on the yoga room floor if they didn't have a place for me to sleep. I would just because I'm not spending $150 or $200 for a hotel room in New York City or something like that. Anyway, there are advantages. There are that can be good to have a little space for a visiting teacher.
In my first studio in California, there was a room that was actually connected to the hot room that wasn't actually closed off. And visiting teachers, I would say they could stay there, but honestly, they would stay there one night and be like, this is baloney. I'm not staying here. The heater's loud. There's like a restaurant next door. So yeah, a specific place sounds really nice. Although I would check with an attorney about the workplace, sleeping in your workplace thing. I don't know. I'm married to a
I well,
lawyer.
there's
yeah,
Sorry.
always that.
you have to have the like the occupancy permit to allow for it or whatever. So
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
don't do
Just
anything
saying.
illegal. But the last thing I'd throw in the mix here is that we haven't explicitly said when you're looking at the layout of your space for any business, you have to look at it in three dimensions. And very few people do this. Look at it vertically as well. When you're on paper, you're looking at it top down and we're laying out that way. You can do a lot vertically. And anyways, the one thing that I've never met an owner ever in any studio, in any wellness business, in any therapy office, in anything ever that says we have too much storage. Like we're just way over calculated on the storage. Wish we didn't do that. That was a waste of like zero. And there's a million that have been like, we have no storage. It's terrible. I have to keep stuff in my house. It's just like crammed underneath here. But storage is always an issue. So you don't need to overdo it with storage, but it is something to consider. Vertically is one of the examples of that, where like if you've got a 17, 20-foot ceiling, then when you're building a room, instead of building a wall all the way up, you build it with a 10-foot ceiling on it, and now you have a mezzanine for storage. Again, occupancy permit has to allow it and fire code and whatever, whatever. But like those are the things that we miss, especially if you're going to have retail stuff like that, keep stock, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I use slat wall. I'm a huge fan of slat wall. Bridget, that place if you could put up slat wall for retail, because that's how I was able to have, my walls made money is because I had no space to put like, racks. So everything was mounted on the walls. And the same thing at the top, I had shelves and up there I would store back stock of like yoga mats and things like that up, and they would visually look nice and things like that. So, but yeah, if you're thinking retail, I'm a huge fan of slat wall because you can move it around and it doesn't take up floor space.
Terry, you just made me think of uh, in the layout and this flow of the client flow, another thing that can be helpful is to think about it through the lens of I'm going to give someone a tour of this space and I'm going to literally point at all of the different spots that I have deliberately placed. And I'm going to say, this is what this is. Do this here. Like I'm going to give them instruction on what to do in the space. For some reason, that can be really clarifying. Where the retail is an example, we're like, where do I want my retail? Well, after they check in and they're past the threshold and I'm on the way to the change room, for example, if I have to walk right through the retail and then when I'm leaving, I have to walk right through the retail as opposed to it being like, it's around the corner over there. Guess what you sell more of? Retail, you know? So just those little things, that idea of giving a tour, I think sometimes can be helpful. And same thing, you're like, hey, if you want to, you can go to this separate room around the corner and then sit down and chill and whatever. And there might be someone there and might not, and I won't be able to see you because it's a weird spot in the back of the building, but it has tea. Are you going to say that to somebody? Like, no. Versus, hey, before the class, this is where you sit and hang out with everybody. You would say that. And so it kind of adds some clarity sometimes.
I had the door to my the main door to my studio was the little like front little window panes, you know, it wasn't solid glass, but it had the little window panes. And so I had slat wall right across it. And I cannot tell you how many times people come out. I've been staring at that outfit all class. I have to have it. You know, every time
Yeah,
they turn around, whatever, they see the outfit. So I made also sure that's the other thing, tip, retail tip is merchandise, remerchandise constantly, right? And because that
absolutely.
happens so many more times than I can count. Oh my God, I've been staring that whole time, Terry. I need to get that.
Terry, I think you need to do a workshop on retail.
I love retail. I've done
I know you.
workshops. Yeah. I did a
What did,
presentation the first year, the first time I met you, Josh. We both remember we were both presenting at Bold.
yep.
And I did a presentation on retail. I said, happiness on a hanger, selling retail, how to sell retail in a small space. And also,
I
speaking of
remember.
workshops, I also will say that going kind of back what you mentioned about our community, Josh, the Artha community, I did just drop part two of a workshop series I'm doing in the community on your first visit flow, on the sales process, whole thing. So the first part was it's recorded. The first part dropped last week, and then this week was the second part, and then 2 weeks the third part will drop, and then we'll actually have open forum discussion on it. So if this is something you're interested in, you know, join the community, and not just myself, but Bridget's doing workshops, Shannon, Coach Carol, who's I don't where she's off somewhere today. So it's a great place for resources, all this stuff we talk about as well. And as Josh said, we do still have space at the summit in November. You really want to transform your business, come to the summit.
There's one more thing that you just triggered, Terry, before this I have to throw in for the
Okay.
layout thing. Man, we're really
Okay.
going for it. I didn't think we were going to talk layout so much.
The horse
This is
is laying.
actually
Yeah.
the the proof. This is the proof how much it matters though. Like
Yeah.
we can easily burn, I could keep going for another quite a bit on some real specific details of layout and building spaces because there's stuff that matters
And
that you
we
don't
haven't
know until
even
you know.
we haven't even touched on things like your HVAC system. And if you have a hot studio, I mean, you could wax philosophical on that for hours, just how to set up
For
ever
it's
ad
something
nauseum.
that ad nauseum is something I'm dealing with a client that's moving spaces right now. Despite how clearly they communicated what they need, then what the contractors built was not that, and like it just, which happens every time, and just so frustrating. Light, light is the other thing that people do consider, but in my opinion, like it's part of the line of sight. But light, and I don't just mean lighting, changes the feeling of a space drastically in both directions. And so, like, why does a casino not have any windows? Because they don't want you to think about outside of the casino. And so
They don't
that,
want you to know what time it is.
right. And so that is a layout decision. Do you want it to feel like that or not? Like, I don't know. It's not about right or wrong. It's just a consideration. One of the things that happens often in a yoga studio, a Pilates studio, wherever else, is either everything else is deprioritized to put the actual practice room like at the front of the building because that's where an existing window is, or that's not considered and everything else is in place, but then the practice room is like this dreary, dark thing, which you can turn into, on the positive, you can turn that into like a cocoon bubble feeling thing, and like you can roll with that vibe. But it's something that's more should be deliberate. And so sometimes that's a layout question. Sometimes it's more just an investment question. Like you got to put a window in, you got to put a light tunnel in, you got to put a skylight in, whatever else. But if you're in a building that has bays on both sides or something like that, you might not be able to put a window in. If it's an older building with a skylight and a grumpy landlord, which is probable if it's an old building, and they're be like, no, we're not putting a skylight in because the roof will leak or it's too expensive or whatever else, or you have limited budget. So it's another consideration that lighting is one of the like a very strong environmental impact. And if you're not sure what we're talking about, think about like the coolest romantic slash vibey restaurant that you've ever been to and tell me what light they had. Like breakfast or lunch, maybe, but it's probably low light. It's definitely yellow warm light. It's definitely indirect light if they've got it right. What they didn't have was like spotlights blasting down 5,000 Kelvin, like because it would not be the same thing. Everything could be identical, and just that alone, you'd be like, I hate this place. Yeah. All right.
Thanks,
Well,
everybody. That was so helpful. I feel like I've got
Bridget,
more information than I could possibly do with.
This is a master class on
I
studio
know.
layout and
You're
design.
welcome, and we're sorry.
yeah, you're gonna have to bring back an updated plan
I
for
know.
approval from the group now
Yeah.
on the round on the
I'm,
roundup.
I'm not doing anything without you guys approving it. So
So good. Well, that's a wrap. This week's weekly roundup. You can tune in every Friday and make sure that you're subscribed because that's the thing to make sure that you're not missing out on this stuff. I don't know why. Some of you, we looked at it. Our views versus subscribers doesn't make sense. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button. We're on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you're listening from. We try to end up in all the spaces. We will see you next week. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
bye.